Hi, this is April Sadowski from Edgewebware, and you're watching an Introduction to WordPress, Gutenberg. In this tutorial, we will cover the ins and outs of the new text editor, dubbed Gutenberg. Before we begin, let's start with the history of Gutenberg. Gutenberg was released as part of WordPress's core infrastructure in December of 2018 with 5.0. It uses a system of blocks to create layouts, similar to what we had been doing with flexible content. While we still use advanced custom fields, or ACF, in our development in order to have better data modeling available for scalability, Gutenberg can replace what we've done in the past with flexible content. All of your traditional word processor tools are components, allowing for more modular control of content. Now let's get into the administration of Gutenberg, starting with the toolbar. At the top of every post or page, you'll notice this new bar that spans the width. This is fixed to the top of the page, and the contents can vary depending on whether the post or page is published or not, as well as some additional settings we'll get into a little bit later. Let's go across this bar in greater detail. First is the plus icon. You'll see this here as well as in your block area. Clicking on the plus in both instances will allow you to see the blocks that you have available to you. By default, you'll see these blocks grouped by most used, common, formatting, layout elements, widgets, embeds, and if you have Yoast for SEO installed, you'll see Yoast structured data blocks. This is added wherever you have your cursor in the Gutenberg editor layout. Next, you have your undo and redo icons. You have your info icon, which shows you your word count, the number of headings, the number of paragraphs, and the number of blocks in your Gutenberg editor. The next icon, which looks a little bit like an indented list, will show you the structure of your Gutenberg layout, much like an outline of a document shows you the structure of the document. On the right side, if this was published, you'd see a text that says switch to draft. That allows you to quickly toggle a published post or page to become a draft. You can also preview, which allows you to preview changes, and publish. If the post is published, this will say update, which allows you to update the changes you've made in the editor. The setting icon brings up your document and block settings. We'll get into these settings a little bit later, but you can collapse the panel by clicking on the icon. It's active if the icon background is solid. The Yoast icon allows you to quickly access your snippet, as well as the ability to quickly preview your readability analysis, focus key phrase, you can also add a related key phrase here, and view your cornerstone content, which is the most important information or articles within your website. The three dots on the right bring up some additional options. You can change the view of the editor to one of the three different options. Starting with Top Toolbar. Top Toolbar adds additional and quick access icons to the top toolbar. One allows you to quickly swap between content types that are available for this block, your alignment, which is applicable to this block, and additional formatting options. On the right, you'll see these three dots. By clicking on them, and when any block is selected, you can hide the blocks or show the block settings, duplicate the block, insert a new block before or after, edit the block as HTML, or add to reusable blocks, which is saving a block with all of the settings you customize being applied, or you can remove the block. If you don't use the top toolbar, those same settings appear in the toolbar immediately above your block. Another setting we have is the spotlight mode. As you can see, once I've clicked this, the title area is a little bit washed out. This makes the block you're working on show up focused, and others become opaque. And then we have our full screen mode. The working area is going to be expanded to fill your screen, so you only see the Gutenberg editor. All of the other toolbars within WordPress are hidden. Document settings in Pages should be very familiar to most WordPress users, but they are collapsed in accordions by default and are inside the Document Settings area if you're using the Gutenberg editor. Let's start with Status and Visibility. This is where you can control the visibility and publish date of the page. While not inherently obvious, clicking the underlined link will open up your options. In Gutenberg, the good thing is you don't need to refer to training documents when it comes to visibility and what items mean, as they're fully displayed in a pop-up selector. And this will be set up based on your site settings for time zone. So if you publish in the future, it will be scheduled. We can also mark an item as pending review by clicking the checkbox. Here we have our permalink. The permalink will show how your URL will be structured based on the title of the content. Clicking on the title in the Gutenberg editor will also reveal the permalink. And you are able to edit it in these two different locations. Above permalink, if this was a published page, you would see revisions, and it just shows you how many revisions there are in the page. Featured image works just like the featured image in your traditional editor. If you're using a cropping image tool like Crop Thumbnails, then after you upload an image, you'll be able to crop it just like you had the ability to do before Gutenberg. Then we have discussion. You no longer need to scroll down the side of a page anymore to access your discussion controls. And here we have our page attributes. You will see this if you're modifying a page, and you will be able to select from an available template, which is applicable in most cases. Since this is a test site we're using for demonstration purposes only, you will not see any templates here. Posts are very similar to pages in the document settings that they have for this document, but there are some additions and differences. With status and visibility, in addition to adding in the post format option, there's also the ability to stick to the front page and mark as pending review from the panel, just like you can with pages. We have our categories area where you can assign posts to categories, or you can also add a new category. You can do the same with tags. You can assign posts to tags or add a new tag here. We also have our excerpt. While some pages, depending on the site build, have an excerpt, posts have the ability to put in an excerpt natively, and it can be modified here. Now let's get into using the editor and start your block layout. First, I'm going to change my settings a little bit, so I'll have top toolbar off, and I'll turn full screen mode on. Now you'll see this on blank pages, where it says add title and start writing or type to choose a block. The title is the title of the page. And we'll start with our first block, which by default here is a paragraph block. Now you'll notice in the paragraph that I have block settings. We'll get into our block settings one by one. But first, one thing to note, that if you want to add additional blocks, you can do that here or here. And if you're using the top toolbar, you'll see them down here. Remember, clicking on the plus sign reveals the same block options as the toolbar. You can also replace using this option. Now let's get into our block settings and our block types. First off, for every single type of block you've added to your layout, you can click on it and then view any applicable settings in the right side panel to adjust specific options. If you're using this paragraph block, for instance, you can change the font size, make your paragraph start with a drop cap, adjust the background color for the paragraph block, and the text color. And you'll notice here that if my text doesn't have good contrast, I'll actually get a little helper notification. Now let's check out our block types. I'll go through these one by one. And as you'll notice, I have this visible with the settings set up to turn off my top toolbar and have full screen mode active. I also want to have visual editor instead of code editor. So first, I have my common blocks. We have paragraph, quote, image, gallery, list, heading, file, audio, cover, and video. And these will reorder depending on your usage. So we'll start with paragraph. This content type allows you to write freeform text. And it also allows you to change things on the side in your block settings. We have the ability to change our font size. We have presets, normal, medium, large, huge, and small. We can also adjust the font size ad hoc. We can toggle to display the first letter as a drop cap. We have color settings, so we can make this entire block have a background color and a text color. And you'll notice that we have this little hint for contrast, so you can make sure your content is readable. The next one I'll click is Gallery. This allows you to create a block image gallery. And this is just for viewing images like this in a grid, as you'd need an additional plugin or us to support a lightbox-based gallery, which is when you click on an image, it's going to allow the larger version to view in a pop-up. In our settings, we can adjust the columns, allow the images to be cropped, and the link to. If we were to use a Lightbox plugin, most likely it's going to require the link to be the media file. And with this and all other blocks, you do have the advanced CSS class available. Image is the next one. It's literally just one image. You have the ability to upload, choose from your media library, insert from URL. It will take up the whole space here by default. In our image settings area, under our block settings, we can put in our alternative text. We can adjust the image size. We have our dimensions that we can manually override. We can also adjust here, which is our scaling presets. It's just a quicker, easier way to do it. You can also reset the dimensions. We have our link to option. The next item here is our list. By default, you'll see a bulleted list. But with our toolbar, we can adjust that to a numbered list. We can also indent and outdent. We can make things bold or italic. And we can use the link tool to link. The nice thing about this, there's less clicking than the old editor. The Gutenberg editor allows you to kind of do everything in one convenient location. So if you're needing to do an external link, you just paste that in right here and then click this, open in a new tab. Cover is a new option. A lot of you will probably like this. It allows you to write text on the top of the image. You can also make this a fixed background. So notice when I scroll, it'll stay in the same spot. You can change the color too, as well as the opacity, which basically means the overlay color is going to be stronger and then that background image is going to fade. Heading is pretty self-explanatory. It allows you to select a heading with heading styles 2 through 4 visible in this toolbar. In our block settings, we can see that we do have an H1 and an H6 and 5. Now, the heading 1 should be reserved for the title, so semantics are still important to remember. We have our text alignment and our HTML anchor. So this is allowing you to link to a section on a page. Here's our quote where we have our quote text and our quote citation. In our styles, we have the difference between regular and large. Visually here, you don't see much of a difference, but this can be reflected on the front end. And you'll notice that if you choose large, that additional CSS class to set it to be large is right here. So you want to make sure that you do not overwrite whatever's in here. You can add to it by putting in the space, but you don't want to delete. Then we have our 3 different options of audio, file, and video. I'm not going to add them all. The audio looks very similar to image. Same thing with file and video. The difference is audio would embed a simple audio player. File would add a link to a downloadable file, and video would embed a video media player. Now we'll get into our formatting blocks. We have code, which basically allows us to write code snippets that will respect spacing and tabs. We have pre-formatted, which is text that respects your spacing and tabs, and it also allows styling. So when coders look at this, there will be a little snippet of CSS that allows us to know that it's pre-formatted and we can style around it. We have our classic formatting editor. If you're already familiar with WordPress and are used to the WordPress editor, this is basically what the WordPress editor was. The difference here is we do see our 3 dots, and that allows us to convert anything that we've put in here into blocks. So it'll use the Gutenberg blocks. So you can go from classic editor to blocks, but not vice versa. And so if you do have an existing website with content in it, you can use the classic editor to convert those into Gutenberg blocks. We have our custom HTML, which allows you to put in custom HTML code, and you can also preview it after you put in content. We have our pull quote, which is basically allowing you to give visual emphasis to a quote from your text. The difference between this and the quote area is our style allows us to do solid color, which allows for a background, and text color. Now the text color by default is only applied to the actual quote. Our next option here is table. Now this is perfect for sharing charts and data, and when you first start creating your table, you'll see the column count and the row count is something that you need to set. On the right in our block settings, we can choose between regular and stripes. So once I make my table, I can switch to stripes and see this striped layout, and we can also choose fixed width cell. And in here, we have the ability to add in a row before or after. We can delete the row. We can add a column before or after. As you can see, that's now 3 columns. And we can also delete our column. And the last formatting option is verse. This looks very similar to pre-formatted. The biggest difference is that developers can style the front end based on the theme. Verse would be good for song lyrics or poetry. Now getting into our layout elements, we have columns. Columns are set up to be 2 columns of equal sizes. You can put about any type of content inside this column using the block editor. You just click the plus and then you select the type of content that you want to appear in here. So we can use our common blocks and choose image on one side and text on the other. We can also switch that up to be file. You can switch this up to be a heading. You can also put blocks of content underneath. And then one thing to note, if you want to adjust your columns, right now there's 2, it's a little hard to get back into being able to click on that column. So what I'd recommend to do is use your block navigation and click on the master column setting. And you could go all the way up to 6 columns. Button allows you to create a button which will prompt visitors to take some kind of action, whether it's going to a place in your website, or it could be used for going to a downloadable item. You can change the background color and the text color. Media and text could be done in a 2-column layout, or here we have media on one side and content on the other. You can change whether that media is on the left by default or the right. More is another block element. This will mark the excerpt of the content, and content before this block will be shown in the excerpt on your archives page. You can also hide the teaser before the more tag here. So what is the teaser? So when someone clicks from your archive page through to a single post, you can hide the content that's located before the more tag. Most cases probably would recommend this, and that is because you may forget that the user wouldn't see what is before the read more tag on the page. Now we'll get into the page break option. This is very new. You're probably not used to seeing this in websites in pages. What it'll do is separate your content into a multi-page experience. So on the front end, Pagination will help guide users to the next page of content. So it's almost like pages within a page, if that makes sense. The separator is allowing you to create a line break between ideas or sections with this horizontal separator. By default, it's what they call a short separator. If you can't click on it, you can always use the block navigation. So the short line is the default. You can do a wide line, which you can see there, it spans across, or you can do dots. The last option here is the spacer. The spacer adds in white space between segments. You can change the height manually in pixels in your block settings. And now we'll take a look at widgets. So our widgets used to be limited to sidebars and predefined locations. Now with Gutenberg, we can place widget items in more text-based areas. If you have WooCommerce installed, you'll notice products by category and products. By clicking products, I can choose what kind of products I'd like to display. I can do individual, product category, filter products, or do all products. And in all of these, you have the ability to adjust your columns, your rows, and also how those products are ordered. Newness, price, rating, sales, and title. With products by category, you're actually selecting all the products in a category to display. And you have the same options with your columns, rows, and order by. Shortcode allows you to put in custom shortcodes with this input area. Gravity Forms is an example of a plugin that uses shortcodes to display their data. You would see them noted by brackets. We have our archives. By default, these two options are not active, but you can show post counts or display as a drop-down, or both. Same thing with your categories. You can show post counts, display as a drop-down, or you can also show hierarchy, which is a little different, and this will show the parent-child relationships. Next, we have our latest comments. I'll put this alongside our latest posts, as they're a little similar in what they can display. So with latest comments, your avatar, date, and excerpt are all default active. You can turn those off one by one or all at once. And here we have the ability to choose how many comments would display in this latest comments section. With our latest posts, we can choose how it's ordered. We have by date or by title. We can choose to limit only into a specific category for those latest posts to display. We can choose the number of posts that are displayed here, as well as displaying the post date. And the last section here we get to is embeds. So we can easily embed content from other sites by a simple click and paste. And you'll see that by default, responsive resizing is active. Most of the embeds require a link. So you'll notice, like if I were to click on Instagram, you'll need the URL for the Instagram link here. So all very similar in how they display. That's it for an introduction to WordPress Gutenberg. Once again, this is April Sadowski, and thanks for watching. We also offer premium training that's tailored to your website and personalized one-on-one training sessions with screen sharing. Contact us on our website, www.edgewebware.com, or call 855-937-9656 and press the first menu option, number 1, to connect to our admin and sales team.